Thanks for joining the Anthony Atiasi Experience. My name is Anthony Atiasi. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm super excited about the guest I have today. We have Pastor Jason Brinkley, who is the lead pastor of Impact Church in Rock Hill, South Carolina. He's been the pastor there since 2017. He holds degrees from John Wesley University and Liberty University Baptist Theological Seminar. Pastor Brinkley is married, lives with his family here in New York, South Carolina, and they have 4 children. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you, and I'm excited to have you. I always start with the first question because I'm always curious. What was your upbringing like, Pastor Brinkley?
Oh, wow. So I was born in Norfolk, Virginia, and have a younger sister. And my parents divorced right about the time I turned 3 years old. And my mom moved me and my sister here, moved us to the Triad area of North Carolina. So I grew up in the Winston-Salem area. And unfortunately, she married and remarried, several times. And that caused us to have to move around a lot. And so I actually counted it up right before I got married. And we moved 23 times from the time I was 3 years old until the time I got married. And I've been married for 23 years now. And so it's kind of ironic that, moved 23 times and now I've been married for 23 years. And I went to 3 different high schools, one of them twice. So there was just a lot of moving, a lot of transition, just when I would kind of start to get established with a friend group or, a neighborhood group of kids, we would be moved. And sometimes that meant moving a different school. And so home life was, it was a lot of transition, a lot of change. Having said that, my mom did a great job of just making sure that we were protected from a lot of things that were going on, I think. And she loved us well, always provided for us, even in the midst of, I remember one time coming home and everything that we owned was in the front yard of the house we were living in at the time. And, not knowing, as a kid, where are we going to go? Where are we going to be sleeping tonight? What are we going to be eating for dinner? And, we never missed anything. We always had what we needed. And she did such a great job providing for us in that way. So as much change and transition, dysfunction, if you will, as there was, still a relatively good upbringing, fairly normal in all other aspects of my childhood and, early teen years. So,
Wow.
So that's where it kind of all started from there.
Absolutely. Did you have any, were there any activities that you enjoyed growing up, whether it was football, soccer, any activities that you enjoyed?
Yeah. So I was very active. I loved being outside. We had, in one of the neighborhoods that I spent the majority of my younger, elementary, middle school years, we had a trail system that connected all of my friends' houses in our neighborhood. So out riding bikes all the time. That eventually led to getting into cycling as an adult. I played multiple sports in high school. We're a soccer family. So I have 2 boys, 2 girls. Both my boys play soccer. One of them is now married. He just got married last year, but both of them played a very high level competitive soccer. And so we're, a soccer family. We watch soccer, we play soccer. My wife and I both played in high school. So, but anything, I just loved being outside. Back then, we didn't have video games, and at least when you did, it wasn't accessible. You had to be in your living room, to play them. And but man, for me, it was just being outside. Anything I could do out of the house, I love to stay active. So
that's interesting. For me, growing up, going back, I'm thinking back. I remember I was a younger age, of course, going to boarding school in Kenya. Then I lived went to school in other parts of the world. And I realized I never really had a best friend because I would be somewhere for a few years and then move to another country.
Yeah.
With you moving around, were you able to like connect with individuals or build relationships with folks before it was time for you to move?
Yeah, oddly enough, again, always being outside, wanting to be involved in whatever the neighborhood, was involved in, or the kids in the neighborhood were doing. So I can even now, names and faces are coming to mind of whether it was, you know, my best friend in the sixth grade. He may not have
Mhm.
remained my best friend for a long period of time, but in the sixth grade, he was my best friend, or even
Mhm.
in high school, some of the guys that I got close to, guy I lived in a neighborhood with for a while. So yeah, even with all the transition, definitely, I love community and connection, and
Mhm.
get a lot from relationships. So, um, and maybe it was because of just the way things were at home. I always wanted to be involved in other people's lives and other
Yeah.
people's
Yeah.
stories, and so not, obviously as a kid didn't understand it that way then, but definitely made some great connections. None of them I'm still connected to now,
Mm.
but definitely in those seasons of life and change, there were people who, for that season, were really, really important. And even to kind of take that question a little further, I guess, not even so much my own peers, but other men, whether it was a coach or a youth pastor or a teacher. I'll never forget my sixth grade teacher, Miss Mickens.
Mhm.
Um, I was the class clown in the sense of, was always trying to make people laugh and wanted it to be fun. And she saw more in me, and
Mhm.
and was really hard on me, and didn't let me get away with some of the stuff that other teachers let me get away with. She's probably the hardest teacher I ever had, but man, she loved me and encouraged me. She challenged me. So definitely friends and different people throughout my early upbringing, that
Mhm.
for that season, man, they were really important, and I was really close to them.
No, that's great. So when you think about that, you mentioned some of those individuals. How important is it for people to have mentorship or mentors in their lives?
I think it's hugely important. Um, I'm a pastor. It's obviously Christianity is a huge part of my life. I gave my life to Christ when I was 14 years old. I actually went to a youth event that a friend that I was playing football with invited me to, because he knew I wanted to date a girl that was going on the trip. I had no interest in God.
Right.
Didn't want to be a Christian. The only Christians I knew were weird and got picked on a lot, and I didn't. You got enough challenges as a young, 13, 14-year-old kid.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I didn't need to add all that, but man, God just really, apprehended my life that night. And so a lot of my life has been impacted by my relationship with God. And I believe we were created for community.
Mhm.
I don't believe any of us are designed to do life alone. And I think that's important through all stages of your life. Even now, being married and having four kids, my youngest is 15, my oldest is 20. Um, I still need that, in
Mm.
my life. And I'll be 50 actually the 22nd of this month. I turn
Mhm.
50, and, that need for other men in my life, whether it's men who hold me accountable, men who encourage me, men who make sure I don't do something stupid,
Yeah.
and hurt my marriage or my ministry or my relationship with my kids. I think all throughout life, we need those people, who really love us, not just for what they can get from us or what they benefit from the relationship, but who really want the best for us and are
Mhm.
willing to invest in our lives, by telling us the truth, again, keeping us on track, telling us the things we need to hear, not just the things we want to hear. So I think it's
Absolutely.
extremely important that, both that you have peers, that can do that for you, but also some people who've been down the road a little further than you
Mhm.
have, so to speak,
Yeah.
who can teach you from their own experience, not just what they learned in college or what their particular degree is in, but they've got real life experience in marriage and raising kids. And now my wife and I were just talking about this morning, where our kids are moving out and developing
Mhm.
lives of their own, and though that's what we raised them to do and they're doing that well, we weren't prepared for what that means for us, like them
Yeah.
not being at certain events or family traditions. And so I'm looking now to who are the people in my life that have had kids graduate and move out. And, who are those empty nesters that in the last 2 or 3 years have gone through what I'm going through now, that can really help me process this transition well, handle this transition well, navigate, this season of my life. So I think it's extremely important, that you have those people in your life.
That's really great information. By the way, my birthday is on July 28th, so we're just a
There
few
you
days.
go. I knew there was something about you.
Exactly. So, at what point did you decide that you wanted to be a pastor?
Well, like I said, I gave my life to Christ at the age of 14.
Mm-hmm.
And my junior year of high school, when I became a Christian, the friend that actually was responsible for that and invited me to come to that youth ministry, he went to a really small private Christian school that was on the campus of a church. And man, when I gave my life to Jesus, I wanted to be around church people all the time, and had just found so much life and belonging. And so I convinced my mom to let me transfer to that school if I got a job and help pay for part of it. And so I transferred to that school, and just through the influence of the people there and being able to really connect with God in that way, my junior year of high school, I felt like God was calling me to full-time ministry. At the time, the school I was going to, if you felt called to ministry, there were only 2 colleges that they really viewed as acceptable. And I applied to one of them and got accepted. But right before I was supposed to go away to school, I just had this check, that wasn't the path I was supposed to take. So I ended up going into the military. I went in the Army Reserves as a chaplain's assistant, and then came back from training and just went to work in, the secular environment, just corporate America. But ministry was my passion. My free time, in my young 20s, where other guys were going out and, it was all about women and partying and, just living it up on the weekends. Man, I wanted to be at church, doing ministry. And so I got involved with youth ministry. And so even though I didn't start getting paid to do ministry, as a career until into my late 30s, I did ministry from 15 years of age, until now. So, but, I've only been a lead pastor now for going on 7 years. And for me, I've never been driven by like, okay, I want to get to this particular rung on the ladder, so to speak. It was just, God, what do you want me to do? And I'll do it. And so, that has morphed, several times throughout my career path, which has led me to this place. But ministry has just been, God put that in my heart almost immediately, in giving my life to Christ. And so that's always been my desire and been what I've done with my free time. And, only in the last, I guess 15, 20 years, has that been my career, where I've gotten paid to do that. So.
Wow. And obviously you had to make a decision to come to Impact Church. What was it about that? Well, talk me through your decision process, and the fact that you decided to come to Impact. How did that go through?
Yes. So I was on staff at a multi-site church in Greensboro, North Carolina. I was a campus pastor, so we had multiple locations, and I oversaw, one of those locations. So I preached a few times a year, but we had a senior pastor who taught most Sundays, but I did everything, was over everything else at the campus and loved my job. I was a firefighter in the community for 6 years before being hired at that church full time. And so very well connected, very well respected, had lots of friends. My wife was a school teacher for 15 years in the community. She was born and raised there, went to college at UNCG. She actually lived with her parents until her and I got married. And then, she moved in obviously with me. And so she never thought, leaving her family was never something she had even considered doing. And my pastor actually called me and another campus pastor into his office one day and said, "It's time. You guys know this is your next step. I know you're both hesitant to take it. I'm giving you a year to figure it out. And so we surrendered all of our responsibilities to the teams that, were at our campuses, and they kept us on staff and just gave us a year to, really try and figure out how to take that next step. What did that next step look for us? And so we thought we would plant a church, closer to home. The pastor had given us, the green light to take some people with us. Any staff that wanted to go with us could go with us. And we actually went to a church planting meeting with an organization that we were a part of. And at that meeting, we really felt like the call on our life was to step into a church that needed what we had helped build and create, at
Mhm.
this other church versus starting from scratch. And so it was literally, sitting in the coffee shop that I work out of sometimes in Greensboro, and just kind of having this conversation with God, like, God, how do I figure out, what churches around need a pastor? And I just felt like he directed me to Google it. That's what
Hmm.
you do, right? When you don't know what to
Right,
do,
right.
you ask Siri or you Google it. And
Yeah, yeah.
so I just Googled pastors needed, and Impact had just posted their position. Their pastor had made some decisions that ended up costing him his position back in October of 2016.
Wow.
October of 2016, I would have told you were crazy if you would have told me we'd be moving my family out of the state, even though it's just 2.5 hours away. But we had that conversation with our pastor in January of 2017, and so we sent our resume in, and I came down to visit that Sunday, brought the whole family, my in-laws. We rolled in here about uh, 8 people, 9 people deep, and checked it out. Didn't tell anybody who I was until after the service. And after the service, I did meet 2 of the trustees who were in charge of hiring the new pastor, and handed them a resume in person, even though I'd already emailed one in. And that led to 3 months of phone conversations, interviews. They got a little over 500 applications for the position. So it
Wow.
took them a while to, kind of sort through that and begin picking candidates that they would interview. And but I knew that first Sunday I came down here, this was it.
Mm.
It took their leadership a little longer to figure that out, but they got to do their due diligence and go through the process. And but I knew right away, it was what we were being called to do. And of course, I believe ministry is a family calling. It's my family's going to pay the price, if we
Mhm.
pursue this calling. And so we had conversation together, prayed about it together, and I would love to tell you that once we made the decision to come, everything was rainbows and unicorns, right? But man, my wife, cried every day for a year,
Wow.
just because she loves her family so much, and they're extremely close. She's got a brother and a sister, and their family is unusually close, get along really well. Um, Very different, obviously from my upbringing, and so that was really hard, for her to be
Mhm.
away from family. And of course, all of our kids are starting at new schools, and we didn't know anybody in Rock Hill. And so that first year was, pretty tough. But that's kind of how we made the decision to come. And God has been extremely faithful in the
Mhm.
last 6 years, and has blessed both my family and the church in more ways than we could have imagined. So definitely
Wow.
on the backside, looking back, we feel like we made the right move. But in that
Yeah.
moment, as confident as you may be, you're still questioning, okay, God, are we really hearing you on this? And have you got us? And man, he's definitely had us.
That's awesome. And when you talked about the decision you made, and you knew that this was the place that you were meant to be. When you make other decisions, just in general, throughout your career, of course, there's a component of faith that's a part of it. What does that process look like when there's a big decision that you have to make, or a little decision? How do you go through that process, and do you always involve the family?
Great question. Um, yeah, I would say definitely if it's a big issue that's going to impact my family, I
Mm-hmm.
try to involve them as much as possible. And I think this has been a great learning experience for our kids. It's taught them how to pray about things and take decisions, really live a surrendered life and, ask the Lord for direction. And, the Bible tells us that if we ask God for wisdom, he'll give it to us graciously. So we always start, whether it's something small, to, something big, like that, relocating your family and changing careers. It always starts for us by going to the Lord, in prayer. And I know that sounds kind of cliche or Christianese, well, yeah, you're a
Mm-hmm.
Christian. That's what you Christians do. But, I don't believe prayer is just some religious activity we have to do. It's a privilege we have, to be able to communicate with God, our creator, and to hear his heart, to get his direction. And so it always starts with prayer. For me, my wife, if she's not on board, more, 9 times out of 10, if she's not on board with it, I'm not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because I believe that's part of her role, as my wife. The word the Bible actually uses there is helper. And it's, when God looks at Adam and says, it's not good that you're alone, and he creates Eve and gives him a wife to bless him and to help him, he wouldn't have given Adam a wife if he didn't need her. And,
Mm-hmm.
part of that need is for her to, my wife is extremely discerning. She's just got great discernment, perception, and we're one. The Bible teaches us that as husband and wife, we're one, and what I do affects her. What she does affects me. So it always goes God first, my wife second.
Right.
If it's something that, if it's, again, going to impact the family, then I definitely want to get the kids' input on that. If it's something, like a work issue that doesn't, impact the family one way or the other, I have staff. We talk
Mm-hmm.
about it as a staff. I believe in getting the right people to the table. If you got the right people at the table, then you should value their input. And, the Bible teaches that there's safety in a multitude of counselors. And
Mm-hmm.
so I just think it's important that before, I feel very confident in my leadership and my ability to hear from God and to lead our organization well. But I also realize I have blind spots and I don't know what I don't know. I can't see what I can't see. And I've got some great staff around me. And so we always talk about, big decisions that we're making as an organization with the staff and my board. And if I don't get consensus from them, then a couple things are true. Either I haven't done a good job of casting vision for them so that they understand what we're going after, why we're doing it. And I need to communicate more and more clearly, or I need to listen to them. It's, I might have the right initiative, but maybe it's not the right time, or we still need some resources, or we haven't thought about the ripple effect, of this decision and prepared for that. So I always try to get staff and board input. And then ultimately, I think what it comes down for me and really what I think it should come down to for any believer is peace.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, Jesus said that that he came to give us peace, and it's a peace different than the world offers us. And I think when you think about the peace that the world offers us, we can only have peace when things are going our way, right?
Yeah.
So when we got
Yep.
plenty of money in the bank,
Yep.
everything is in the green, it's up and to the right, then we're at peace. The minute the scales shift, my peace is gone. But Jesus said he gives us a different peace, and it's not dependent on your circumstances or your situation. And I know there have been times when, I don't think there was a wrong choice, really. It was the choice between two good things. And I think I had the freedom to choose either one of those things in the moment.
Mm.
But I just didn't quite have the peace to pursue one avenue where the other avenue, even though I maybe didn't know exactly how it was going to go, or I didn't have all the answers I wanted, there was just a peace that was the right thing to do. And when I say that, I don't mean, if this is the scale, you got peace and it tips the scale like that. Usually it's just, just the slightest tilt to where, okay, after doing my due diligence and, talking to the people I need to talk to and praying about this and seeking God's counsel, this is where I have the peace to move
Mhm.
forward. And that's where, that faith really comes into play, that, okay, I've done all that I can do to get all the information I need. We've got to make a decision. I just don't have the peace about one, but I've got the peace about the other. And that
Wow.
typically has worked well so far. So
That's a great way to look at it, and I think you also touched on some, components of being a great leader is being inclusive and being able to listen as well. So those are really some key nuggets that you just shared there. So when it comes to balancing, between being a pastor, being a husband, being a father, and being in the community, how do you manage all those hats? Because that's a lot.
yeah, yeah, it can be overwhelming in different seasons. Just like your family, you have different seasons. So the birth of a child, or
Mhm.
that those transitions between elementary and middle school, high school,
Yep.
college, but then ministry or work, even in the corporate world, you have seasons as well. So end of year, the closing the calendar, writing the budget for the next year. For us, it's, Christmas, Easter, those are always big times. So growing up, I think, I always heard, man, you want balance. You got to balance your work life and
Mhm.
your family life. And I think that just sets us up for failure, because there's no way to keep that balance.
Mm.
There are going to be times when the demands of work, shift that scale, and you need to invest more time and attention there than you normally do. There are going to be times when your family, whether it's I've had two major back surgeries, two spinal fusions, and my family really had to step in, in those seasons and do things around the house that, they didn't normally do. And um, so I think what you're really looking for, and again, from a Christian perspective, I think this is biblical in that everything is ebb and flow. There's a rhythm to life, night and day, the changing of the seasons, the tide in the ocean. Even in a 24-hour day, the sun rising and setting. There's
Mm.
this ebb and flow, this give and take, this rhythm of life, and that's what I shoot for. I try to make sure I've got a healthy rhythm. For me, marriage is my first ministry,
Mm.
and I made that clear, before I took the job, that I believe the thing I will be held most accountable for when I stand before God will be, how I invested in my marriage. This gift, the Bible says that he who finds a wife finds a good thing. That's a gift from God, and I have a stewardship responsibility in my marriage. And so I think, for me, it's marriage first, kids second. I don't want to sacrifice my kids for the sake of the ministry. Um,
Mhm.
and so I just have to, again, there are times when I do miss a family event. There are times when I miss a church event, but I try to, make sure I'm not missing all family for church or all church
Right.
for family. And
Right.
I do travel. My travel has picked up some over the last couple of years with different missions opportunities. And so I try to make sure, if I know I'm gonna be out of town for a week, either the week before, so kind of like, investing ahead of time so that I can make that deposit the following week of
Mm.
taking out time and connection with them, whether it's a date night with my wife or a family night, with the kids. I'm trying to do something that week before to where I'm investing a lot of extra time that week, or the week that I get back. So I shut the work calendar down the week I get back, and it's family time, lunches, dinners, date nights, those kind of things. So just monitoring that rhythm, I think, again, first setting your priorities. So it's
Mhm.
clear for me: wife first, kids second, ministry third. If you, for a corporate person, that would be their job,
Yeah.
third. And then with those responsibilities defined that way, making sure the rhythm between the three is healthy.
Mm.
And again, my wife is a great help with that, right? She can tell me, hey, you've been running 100 miles an hour at work. We need a date night, so she
Yeah.
help, or you haven't spent some quality time with the girls or with the boys, y'all need to go do something together. So again, she's a big help with that, but just managing that rhythm, I think is so important.
Oh, wow. It's a couple of days ago, my wife was like, in the next 30 days, let's go out on a date. So you're right. You get that reminder, which I think it's important. Touch a little bit about some of the work that you're doing outside of the states from a ministry perspective.
Yeah. So, I believe the mission of every church is the same. Jesus said, "You are to be my witnesses. You're to go and tell people about me everywhere." So our job, our main mission as a church is to help people understand, there's a God who created you and he loves you and he wants a relationship with you. And here's how you do that. And I believe that's the same for every church. How that gets worked out in each church, I think is different, and we would call that vision. So how we accomplish that mission versus another church, might be different. So they might do Sunday school. We do small groups. It's not that one's better than the other. We just feel like this is kind of who we're called to be and what we're called to do. And so one of the, I guess, callings that we feel like is on our church is to equip and resource other churches all across the world to do what we do in our own community. So first, that would be to help those pastors stay healthy, make sure they finish well so that, again, they're monitoring their rhythms and their priorities and their own personal health, physical, emotional, spiritual. So we pour into those pastors and then helping equip their churches. A lot of these churches, we do a lot of work in India. We're actually in, I think, over 30 countries right now. Wow. With an active ministry presence. And so giving the church resources, helping them understand how we do things. We know it's not that we do it better than everybody else. We're just offering what we know, what we have, because they don't have access like that. Even with the internet, they're not able to get people, to come and teach and to show them. And so we're equipping churches. We really feel like that's our call, to help other churches be the light in their community that we're trying to be in ours. So how do you do outreach? How do you invest in the people in your community, helping them figure out those things? So I'll be heading to Peru next week, and we will do a pastors conference where we'll bring pastors in from several different nations and train them there. We also do children sponsorship through that same organization. And so we sponsor children all over the world, in some of the poorest places in the world. We make sure they get education, they get clothing, they get food, and all of that is done in a Christian environment. And so we have the child sponsorships. So we'll do kind of like a kids camp in Peru for the kids there in those network of churches. And then we also do medical clinics. So we'll take some medical professionals in with us and do typically the type of stuff you would get at a normal checkup that they don't get to get. So, weighing them, temperature, blood pressure, stuff that we can check without a lot of specialized equipment, do some mild treatment type stuff. So it's all directed to the local churches in those areas, focused on equipping and resourcing the pastor in the church, the children's ministry, investing in the next generation, and then doing the medical clinics, because a lot of them don't have access to medical care. So that's kind of the 30,000 foot view of what we're doing, in all these different places. So we're working. We've just started work in Cuba. We hope for that to continue to grow, but we're in Nepal, Thailand, China, Peru, Ecuador. The list goes on and on. We're connected with a great network that helps us get connected to pastors in those areas.
That's excellent. I definitely applaud you guys for what you're doing, and it reminds us not to take things for granted that we have, and it's some of the basic stuff that we have here at home. Wrapping up, as you think about Impact Church, what do you see for the church, in the next coming years, whether it's the next few years, 5 years, 10 years? What's some of the vision plans that you see for the church?
Yeah, so we've been talking about that, a lot over the last 2 years. Our church has grown very quickly. When I got here 6 years ago, I think there were 156 people here that Sunday. It might have been 186. Now, on any given Sunday, we're running around 800 people. We had a little over 1,200 here for Easter. And so, and I say that just to say, our heart is to reach people. this is what we were created for. We were created to know God and to be loved by God and to experience a life-giving, authentic relationship with him. And we know how life-changing that is for everybody, not just in this world, but in eternity to come. And so I know how much a relationship with Jesus has changed my life and impacted my kids. And so we want to tell as many people as we can, about God and to help them discover that love and relationship for themselves. And we won't be satisfied until every person has had that opportunity, so at least in the time that we have here, we want to reach as many people with the good news, of God's love that we possibly can. And so because that's our goal, and because we do it in a pretty healthy culture, I mean, we work really hard to make sure that our leadership is healthy, the environment, the culture here is healthy. And I think that's, been part of the reason we've grown so much, is that when people come here, it's a great experience. More importantly, they discover what's been missing in their life, all this time. And so because that's true, we want to continue to create space. And so we're looking at, I guess the next thing we'll do is we'll launch a third service in the fall. We have 2 right now on Sunday mornings. And then we've already been at work with the design team on working on an additional expansion to the current property that we're on. That will enable us to minister to more families. Our kids' rooms right now are busting at the seams, and we've got a great kids ministry and a great youth ministry, and we need more room, for the children that are coming. If you figure, for every 2 adults, right, for every mom and dad that comes, there's maybe 3 or 4 kids. And so, just creating space for them. I kind of tell people it's like this: if, let's say we weren't, because I think there's this perception out there that churches just try to get big for the sake of getting big because it means more money or more prestige or more popularity. But I tell people, let's say we were in the medical profession and we discovered the cure for cancer. We know how to treat cancer. And so we built this brand new hospital. We hired the best doctors you could find, brought in the best equipment that money could buy. And when people came in, we gave them free coffee and beverages, and man, we gave them a care package when they left. I mean, it was just a great experience. And when they left, they had no more cancer. Would we be satisfied if we filled up all the beds in the hospital, and then just said, okay, well, all the other people who need help but don't have it yet, somebody else will just have to figure that out. We've kind of treated all the people we can right now. We would be looking for, man, how can we create more rooms, more beds, hire more doctors, because look at the life change that's bringing. That's the mentality we kind of have. We know what a real relationship, not just being religious, not just trying to modify people's behavior, but really giving them the opportunity to have a real relationship with God, and how that changes their life. We'll never stop wanting to do that for every person we can. So we want to create more space. And so we're trying to maximize, the amount of ministry we can do in the current footprint that we are already on. So we actually just launched the campaign at the 1st of June.
Okay.
We owe be very transparent here, I guess, and just put these numbers out there. But we've gone public with this in the church. So we owe about $1.8 million with mortgage and, the land and building and everything that we have. We've launched a campaign to pay that off in 18 months. Wow. And so we're hopefully December of 2024 going to be debt free, and not that, we won't go into more financing to build the next phase, but we won't be stacking that debt on top of what we already have now. So we're trying to be wise, about how we expand and how we continue to reach out, but definitely want to continue to create more space. So that's, I guess, locally what we're trying to do. And then, of course, trying to continue to expand our reach across the globe with the different ministries that we partner with, and resources that we can provide and make available to them. So, we know part of being able to do all that work in these other countries that we're able to do is making sure we've got a strong, healthy ministry here that can support that. So that's kind of the long. Outside of that, we really don't know exactly what's next, and just try to steward all the resources that God gives us effectively.
Absolutely. Wow, that was that was really good, and I appreciate, as I mentioned at the beginning, appreciate the time, appreciate you coming on, appreciate your message, and I know that the people who listen to this are going to walk away with inspiration that they can make an impact in their communities as well, which I think ultimately is one of the things that we've been called to do. So
Yeah.
thank you so much. I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
Yeah. It's
And
time for another lunch for sure.
yeah, it is. It really is. So we'll make sure that happens. We wrap it up here.